Welcome to our deep dive into Cal Newport's deep work.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it is. We're going to explore
It's a good book.
how to produce that really high-quality work in a world that just seems determined to distract us.
Right.
You'll hear about some pretty intriguing folks along the way,
Oh, yeah.
like Carl Jung, who built a tower
Hmm.
just to escape distractions and write,
Uh-huh.
and J.K. Rowling, who checked into a luxury hotel to finish the last Harry Potter book.
It's fascinating how people who produce at an elite level seem to just intuitively understand the power of deep work.
Totally. You mentioned wanting to develop new skills and advance in your career.
Uh-huh.
Well, this deep dive is going to give you a framework for doing just that.
Yeah.
Let's start by defining deep work.
Okay.
What is that?
Well, Cal Newport defines deep work as the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task.
Okay.
So think about it as the opposite of shallow work.
Right.
Things like checking emails, attending pointless meetings, or scrolling through social media.
Uh,
All that stuff that tends to fill our days but doesn't actually move the needle.
It sounds like shallow work is the junk food of the work world. We might feel full, but it's not actually nourishing.
Exactly. And just like junk food, shallow work can be addictive. Our workplaces are often designed to encourage it,
Yeah.
with open offices, constant connectivity, and a culture that prizes busyness over actual results.
So how do we break free from this shallow work addiction and start feasting on deep work?
That's where the superstar effect comes in. As companies can now hire the best talent from anywhere in the world, it's the people who can produce at an elite level who rise to the top.
Right.
And that ability to produce at an elite level requires deep work.
It makes me think about somebody like Jason Ben, a financial consultant who realized he was spending, most of his workday browsing the web.
Oh, wow.
He wanted to make a change, so he literally locked himself in a room with no computer, just textbooks, and taught himself to code.
Wow.
It wasn't easy, but he persevered and eventually landed a job at a San Francisco startup.
That's dedication.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Inspiring.
Ben's story shows that we can all carve out time for deep work, even when it's difficult. Like, Ben, you have goals you want to achieve. What if you dedicated a specific block of time each week, even just 30 minutes, to focus solely on developing a new skill? It's like creating a mental gym for your brain, right?
Exactly. And just like physical exercise strengthens your muscles, deep work strengthens your brain's ability to focus and learn. It literally helps build myelin, which you can think of as insulation for your brain's wiring. The more you practice deep work, the faster and more efficiently your brain can process information.
And then there's that attention residue that Newport talks about.
Oh, all right.
He explains how switching between tasks actually leaves a mental residue that reduces our cognitive capacity.
Yes.
It's like trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of rocks. The more we allow ourselves to be distracted, the heavier that backpack becomes, and the harder it is to perform at our best.
Yeah.
So we're not just talking about some productivity hack here. We're talking about harnessing the power of our brains to achieve extraordinary results.
Absolutely.
But there's more to it than just results.
Yeah.
There's also a connection between deep work and finding meaning in our work.
Absolutely. Newport talks about deep work as a form of craftsmanship. He uses the example of master swordsmith, Rick Furr, who spends his days in deep focus forging exquisite blades.
Oh, wow.
And it's not just about the swords themselves.
Right.
It's about Furr's dedication to his craft, his commitment to excellence.
That reminds me of you and your passion for listeners' field of work. You're always pushing yourself to improve your skills and produce the highest quality work possible.
Thank you. It's that craftsman mindset that can be applied to any type of work. It's about taking pride in your skills, pushing yourself to improve, and creating something of value. You mentioned that you're working on a challenging project right now. How could you approach this project with a craftsman's mindset?
It's about looking beyond just checking boxes on a to-do list and seeing the work as an opportunity to create something truly meaningful and valuable.
Exactly. Now, we all know that deep work isn't always easy.
Right.
There are different philosophies for how to incorporate it into your life.
Okay. Let's dive into those philosophies.
Yeah.
The different ways we can actually make deep work happen in our own lives.
Right. Let's start with the most intense approach, the monastic philosophy. Think of those writers who retreat to a cabin in the woods, completely cut off from the outside world, dedicating themselves entirely to their craft. They eliminate all distractions and just focus on producing their best work.
That sounds amazing, but also a bit intimidating.
Right.
I don't think I could completely disconnect for weeks on end.
Yeah, not many of us can. But even incorporating shorter periods of monastic deep work can be beneficial. Take Adam Grant, for instance. The Wharton professor schedules a few days each month to go completely off the grid. No email, no meetings, just focused work on his research. And when he's not in that deep work mode, he's incredibly collaborative and accessible.
That sounds more manageable, like toggling between intense focus and periods of more collaborative work.
Yeah.
Newport calls this the bimodal philosophy, right?
Exactly. It's about finding a rhythm that works for you, switching between those two modes of operation. Sometimes you need that deep focus concentration like Carl Jung retreating to his tower, and sometimes you need to engage with the world and collaborate with others.
Okay, I'm liking this bimodal approach.
Yeah.
It feels more realistic for my work style. But how do I actually carve out those blocks of time for deep work when my schedule is often unpredictable?
That's where the rhythmic philosophy comes in. It's about establishing a regular daily routine that includes dedicated time for deep work. Instead of waiting for large chunks of uninterrupted time, you build it into your daily schedule. Maybe it's the first hour of each workday or a specific time slot each afternoon.
I can see how that would help create a consistent habit of deep work.
Uh-huh.
But what about those days when my schedule is completely thrown off by unexpected meetings or urgent deadlines?
Then you might embrace the journalistic philosophy. This is all about seizing opportunities for deep work whenever they arise. Just like a journalist might find a spare hour to write an article in between covering breaking news.
So it's about being adaptable and fitting in deep work sessions whenever you can find a free hour or two.
Exactly. Cal Newport himself uses this approach. And so does Walter Isaacson, the biographer who wrote that incredible Steve Jobs book.
Oh, wow.
He'd squeeze in writing sessions of 20 minutes or an hour whenever he had a moment, and he ended up producing an amazing body of work.
This journalistic approach feels the most attainable for me right now, given my current workload.
Yeah.
But what about specific strategies for staying focused once you've carved out that time?
There's a whole toolbox of techniques for that. One that I find particularly intriguing is what Newport calls productive meditation.
That sounds like a contradiction in terms.
Right.
Isn't meditation about clearing your mind, not being productive?
It's not about traditional seated meditation. It's about using activities like walking, running, or even showering to think deeply about work challenges.
So it's like giving your brain a chance to work on a problem in the background while your body is engaged in something else.
Exactly. Newport himself uses this technique during his daily commute, and he says he outlined a significant portion of his last book while on foot.
Oh, wow. I actually find that I get some of my best ideas when I'm away from my desk, when my mind is free to wander.
Right.
But how do I make sure I'm actually making progress and not just letting my mind drift aimlessly?
Structure is key. Identify the variables of the problem you're working on, define the next question you need to answer, and then focus your attention on finding a solution.
Okay.
It's a mental workout.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm definitely going to try this productive meditation technique. But what about those times when I need to be laser focused? When I really need to block out all distractions and get into the flow state?
Newport has some intriguing suggestions for improving concentration. One that might surprise you is memory training.
Memory training.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to become a memory champion here.
I know it sounds unexpected, but Newport argues that the mental discipline of memory training strengthens your overall ability to concentrate. He uses the example of Daniel Kiloff, a student who used memory techniques to achieve incredible academic success. Kiloff wasn't naturally gifted, but trained his memory to the point where he could memorize a deck of cards in under 2 minutes.
That's incredible. But I still don't see how memorizing a deck of cards translates to focusing on work tasks.
It's not about the specific information you're memorizing. It's about building those mental muscles. The process of forcing your mind to focus and recall information accurately translates to other areas of your work. You're essentially training your brain to stay on task.
So it's like weightlifting for your brain. The more you practice, the stronger your focus becomes.
Exactly. Even something as simple as memorizing a shopping list without writing it down can be a good starting point.
Okay, I'm willing to give it a try. But what about those digital distractions that seem impossible to escape? The constant notifications, the endless scrolling, it feels like a losing battle.
You're not alone in feeling that way. But remember, we're aiming to take back control. One strategy Newport suggests is scheduling internet blocks.
So, Giving myself permission to check email or browse social media, but only at specific times.
Precisely. It's about minimizing those constant task switches that leave behind that attention residue, making it harder to focus on deep work. By scheduling those internet blocks, you reduce those disruptive interruptions.
I do see how that would help create more focused work sessions, but I also worry about missing something important. What if I need to check email for an urgent message?
Newport isn't suggesting we disconnect entirely. It's about being more intentional with our internet use and setting those boundaries to protect our deep work time.
So it's not a ban on the internet, but rather a way to create more structure and reclaim control of our attention. I
Right.
like that. What other tactics does he suggest for taming the shallow work beast?
One that I found particularly helpful is the idea of a shutdown ritual at the end of the workday.
Ah, yes. The mental equivalent of clocking out.
Exactly. It's about creating a clear separation between work time and personal time. Newport suggests a consistent ritual that helps you transition out of work mode. Review your to-do list, make a plan for the next day, and then physically close your laptop and put your work phone away.
He also emphasizes the importance of not checking email after work hours, right?
Absolutely. It's about protecting your personal time and giving your brain a chance to rest and recharge. We all know how tempting it is to check email late at night, but it often just creates stress and makes it harder to relax.
Okay, so scheduling internet blocks and establishing a shutdown ritual are great strategies for creating boundaries and protecting our time and attention. But I have to admit, I'm still struggling with social media. It feels like everyone's on it constantly, and I'm afraid of missing out if I'm not checking it all the time.
That fear of missing out is something a lot of people experience. But Newport suggests we question how much value we're actually getting from these platforms.
He even proposes a 30-day social media detox as an experiment.
It's a radical suggestion, but it can be incredibly insightful. It gives you a chance to step back and see what happens when you're not constantly bombarded with updates and notifications. You might be surprised to find that you're not actually missing out on anything important.
I could definitely use a break from the constant scrolling. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about scheduling our workdays. I'm not great at sticking to a rigid schedule. I tend to be more go with the flow.
I understand. But Newport makes a compelling case for a fixed schedule approach.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more. A fixed schedule. Isn't that a little too rigid? I feel like my workdays are constantly changing with new tasks and demands popping up all the time.
It might sound counterintuitive, but that's precisely why a fixed schedule can be so powerful. You set a clear endpoint to your workday,
Okay.
and then work backward, figuring out how to get everything done within that time frame.
So it's like giving myself a deadline for work, just like I would for any other project.
Exactly. And Cal Newport lives by this principle. He's a busy professor, yet he consistently finishes his workday by 5:30 p.m. to spend evenings with his family.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
But how does he manage to fit everything into such a compressed workday?
By being ruthlessly intentional with his time, he prioritizes the most important tasks and eliminates or delegates anything that isn't absolutely essential.
It sounds like a fixed schedule forces you to be more efficient and make tough decisions about what truly matters. No more wasting time on those shallow tasks.
Precisely. You mentioned feeling overwhelmed by your workload. What if you experimented with a fixed schedule for just 1 week? Set a clear end time for each day, and then prioritize your tasks accordingly.
That's a great challenge. I'm willing to give it a try.
Yeah.
But even with a fixed schedule, I still need to find ways to manage those shallow tasks that inevitably creep into my workday. Any advice on that front?
Remember Newport's suggestion to schedule every minute of your workday. It might sound a bit extreme, but it can be incredibly revealing. You become acutely aware of where your time is actually going, and you can identify those time-wasting black holes in your schedule.
So it's not about becoming a slave to the clock, but rather about becoming more conscious of how I'm spending my time and energy.
Exactly. It helps you shift from a reactive mode to a proactive mode, making deliberate choices about how you allocate your time, instead of just reacting to every email or request that comes your way.
I can see how that would help me feel more in control of my workday. But honestly, scheduling every minute still feels a bit overwhelming to me.
Remember, it's about finding what works for you. If scheduling every minute feels too rigid, start with identifying your biggest time wasters and then look for ways to minimize or eliminate them.
Okay, that feels more manageable. And once I've identified those time wasters, how do I decide which tasks to prioritize?
Think back to Newport's idea of quantifying the depth of each activity. Ask yourself, how long would it take to train someone with no experience in my field to complete this task? If it would take a long time, it's likely a deep work activity that deserves prioritization.
That's a helpful way to think about it. It shifts the focus from just checking things off my to-do list to considering the real value and impact of each task.
Exactly. And for those shallow tasks that you can't completely eliminate, remember the concept of a shallow work budget. Set a limit on how much time you'll spend on those activities each week.
That's a great way to ensure that shallow work doesn't completely take over.
Okay.
Okay, I'm feeling more equipped to tackle those shallow tasks.
Yeah.
But can we talk about email? It's a constant source of stress for me.
Email is a major productivity killer for many people.
It is.
Newport offers some practical tips that can help. One is to be ruthless with your sender filters, only allowing the most essential emails to reach your main inbox.
So it's about creating a VIP list for my inbox and letting the less important messages go to a separate folder.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to let some messages go unanswered. You're not obligated to respond to every email, especially those that aren't directly related to your top priorities.
That feels a bit radical, but also liberating. I'm always worried about being perceived as unresponsive, but I need to remind myself that my time and attention are valuable.
It's about setting boundaries and protecting your energy. Another email tip Newport suggests is to do more work when you send or reply to emails.
Wait, I thought the goal was to spend less time on email. How does doing more work actually help?
It's about being proactive and aiming to resolve issues efficiently, rather than just firing off quick replies that keep the email chain going. Take a moment to consider what the sender is really asking for, and then craft a response that provides a complete and actionable solution.
So it's about being more thoughtful and intentional with my email communication.
Exactly. It might take a bit more effort up front, but it can save a lot of time and headache in the long run.
This has been so insightful. I'm feeling more confident about applying these deep work principles to my own life.
That's fantastic. Remember, deep work is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice and intentionality. Don't get discouraged if you slip up or face challenges along the way. The key is to keep experimenting, keep refining your approach, and keep striving to produce your best work.
This deep dive has given me so much to think about
Good.
and a whole toolkit of strategies to try. What's one final piece of advice you would offer to our listeners?
Start small. Choose one specific change you can make this week to incorporate more deep work into your life. Maybe it's scheduling a 30-minute block of uninterrupted time for a challenging task, or practicing productive meditation during your commute. The key is to build momentum and experience the transformative power of deep work for yourself.
That's a great challenge. So to our listeners, we encourage you to embrace the power of deep work and see what amazing things you can achieve. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of big ideas.